So, I actually want to start off with a little experiment today.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, nothing crazy. Just wherever you are right now. Well, unless you're driving. Obviously, don't do this if you're behind the wheel, but if you can, just close your eyes for a second.
All right, eyes are closed.
Now, instinctively, without overthinking it at all, just point to where you think God is.
Well, I'm gonna bet good money that almost everyone's finger is pointing straight up right now.
Exactly. Straight up at the ceiling or, the sky. It's almost a reflex, right?
Yeah, it's a super deep-seated cultural muscle memory.
Right. We just look up, we imagine this distant realm way above the cloud layer, like a throne room or a mountaintop or just somewhere else.
Somewhere that very definitely isn't here.
Exactly.
It really establishes a very specific geometry of existence, doesn't it? Like, there's us down here in the mud and the traffic and the daily grind, and then there's the divine way up there in the pristine ether.
It creates a vertical
A
distance.
huge fundamental separation, yeah.
And that distance, that separation, really is exactly what we are going to completely dismantle today. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. I'm your host. And with me, as always, is our resident expert.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a heavy hitter.
It really is. Today, we are looking at a source text titled simply God and Omniscience PDF. And honestly, it's deceptively small.
Yeah, it's not some massive 500-page theological tome written in Latin or something.
No, it's quite short, but it packs this philosophical punch that completely rearranges the furniture of the universe. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty specific.
We aren't here to debate religious history or, decode ancient scriptures today.
Right. We are here to unpack a very specific, almost technical definition of divinity found in this text. It's a definition that argues God is not a supernatural entity, but a totally natural phenomenon.
Which is a massive distinction right out of the gate. We usually think of natural and God as complete opposites, but this text says they are basically synonyms.
And the really wild claim here is that you, the listener, are not separate from God. You aren't a creation sitting on a shelf like a ceramic pot made by a potter.
Right, you are an integral part of the whole.
Now, I know that sounds like a nice greeting card slogan.
It does sound a bit poetic at first glance, We are all one. It's very Woodstock.
It was very Woodstock. But here's the thing. When you actually drill down into the logic that this source presents, it stops being poetic and starts being a little brain-melting.
It really forces you to confront some intense logic puzzles about your own existence.
Yeah, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. The text actually starts with a negation. It tells us immediately where God is not.
Right. It explicitly says God is not something out there in one physical location. That's the very first pillar it knocks down.
So if you're looking for a specific address or a specific being, like a cosmic CEO residing in a penthouse suite, you're starting from a false premise, according to this author.
Exactly. But I can hear people playing devil's advocate here.
Oh, for sure. They're thinking, if God isn't out there and isn't a being in the traditional sense, aren't we just defining God out of existence?
Yeah, like, are we just talking about nothing?
That's the fear, right? If it's not a guy on a cloud, it must be just empty space. But the text pivots here. It defines God as the summation of all that exists.
The summation of all that exists. We really need to unpack that.
Because that sounds like, well, everything. Like the desk I'm sitting at, the chair, the microphone, the cat sleeping in the corner.
It is everything, but you have to be careful with the word summation. It's not just a big random pile of stuff. The text also calls it the continuity of all consciousness.
Okay, continuity, that implies flow.
Connection.
Think of it this way. You have a physical body, right? And your body is made of trillions of individual cells.
Right, mostly water and cells.
Now, if a single skin cell on your arm somehow gained consciousness and could talk, and it said, hey, I'm looking for the host of this deep dive. Where are they? What would you say to that cell?
I mean, I'd say, you're part of me. You're literally in me. Exactly. You aren't some middle manager floating above your body telling your heart to beat or your lungs to breathe. You are the body.
I'm the whole system.
Right. You are the biological, physical, and conscious reality of that entire system. And this source is basically arguing that God is the body of the universe and we are the cells.
Oh, man. So this is where it gets really interesting for me. Because if God is the summation of all that exists, and we're taking that literally, That includes the very air in this room.
Yes.
It includes the traffic outside my window. It
Yeah.
includes me.
Completely. That is the inevitable conclusion the source draws. It explicitly states you cannot separate yourself from God because you are an integral part of the whole that is God.
That is such a wild shift in perspective from how most of us were raised. Usually people think, okay, I am a person, I have a soul, and maybe that soul connects to God like a Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah, a signal you have to desperately try to keep a strong connection to.
Right. But this is saying, no, you are a piece of the architecture itself. You are the router, the signal, and the internet.
Think of it like a wave in the ocean. We've all heard that analogy before.
Yeah, it's a classic philosophical trope. The wave dies, returns to the ocean.
But let's look a little closer at it. The wave might feel like a totally separate event. It rises up, it crashes, it has a distinct shape. It looks totally different from the flat water right next to it.
Sure, it have a temporary identity.
But can you take a bucket, scoop up the wave, and separate it from the ocean?
No,
Mhm.
obviously not. You'd just get a bucket of seawater. The wave was really just the ocean doing something specific for a brief moment.
Exactly. The wave is the ocean in motion. And the text says, God is something that is within all life. It's not just that you are made of God's stuff. It's that the animating force, the consciousness itself, is continuous.
It's one single stream.
One stream.
This really reframes that whole idea of meeting your maker when you die, doesn't it? You can't really meet something you already are.
No, you can't. It would be like your left hand trying to shake hands with your entire body. It doesn't make logical sense.
And I think this leads us to what is probably one of the most intellectually satisfying sections of the text, which addresses why people stop believing in God in the first place.
Yes. The source has a very sympathetic yet deeply analytical take on atheism.
I love this part. It doesn't condemn atheism at all, which you might expect a spiritual text to do. It actually tries to explain the mechanics behind it.
It says, atheism can often result from trying to believe God to be a separate, supernatural entity from oneself.
Which honestly makes perfect sense when you think about it. If I come to you and say, there is an invisible giant living on Mars who controls the weather and gets mad when you swear.
My rational brain, my modern skeptical brain, is going to immediately say, I need proof. I don't see him. The Mars rover doesn't see him. I don't believe it.
Right. It feels like a fairy tale. And adults eventually put away fairy tales.
Exactly. The source is arguing that this separate supernatural entity model is incredibly difficult to accept because it completely contradicts our lived experience of reality. It feels artificial.
So when people reject that fairy tale, they identify as atheists. They are essentially saying no to the invisible giant.
But the text argues that they are rejecting the wrong thing.
Right. They're rejecting the model of God, not the reality of the divine.
Precisely. The source suggests a major shift in definition. It says, when the realization is made that God is truly omniscient and that God is all that exists and all that exists is God, doubt about the existence of God can be diminished.
Because you literally can't doubt existence.
You can't. And this is where the text throws down what I'd call a logic bomb. It states, to doubt the existence of God is to doubt your own existence.
Okay, let's slow down and really chew on that for a second. Because on the surface, that sounds like a riddle or a linguistic trap. To doubt God is to doubt yourself.
It does sound like a trap, but it's actually a very tight syllogism. Let's break it down based on the definitions the source just gave us.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Premise A, we define God not as a person, but as the totality of reality, everything that is.
Got it. So God equals reality.
Premise B, you exist. You are a real, functioning part of reality.
I'm pretty sure I exist. I'm
Yeah.
sitting here talking to you. I'm drinking my coffee. Yeah, I'm here.
Right. So if God is simply another word for the totality of existence, and you are undeniably part of existence, then your very presence is proof of the concept.
I am the evidence.
You are the evidence. So saying, I don't believe in God within this specific framework.
It would be like a cell in my body saying, I believe in cells, but I don't believe in the body.
Exactly. It's a category error. The cell is the body. You are a manifestation of the divine.
The source puts it even more bluntly later on. It says, God is S because we are.
That is such a powerful inversion, isn't
It
it?
totally flips the script. Usually, traditional religion says, we are because God is. Creator makes creation. Top-down management.
But this says, God is because we are. Our very existence confirms the existence of the whole. We are the conscious witnesses to the phenomenon of reality.
It also mentions that God is a totally natural phenomenon. I feel like that phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this text. It sounds almost scientific.
It is entirely intended to be. It strips away all the magic. It strips away the impossible. If God is the summation of nature, then God is nature.
So does that mean things like physics, gravity, thermodynamics?
Yeah.
These aren't things God invented.
In this view, no, they aren't inventions. They are the behavior of God.
Whoa.
Yeah. God isn't out there defying the laws of physics to perform miracles. God is the laws of physics and the matter and the observer of the physics.
It completely removes that supernatural stigma that makes so many modern, scientifically minded people just roll their eyes.
It bridges the gap.
So we've essentially moved God from being this Wizard of Oz figure behind a curtain pulling levers to being the curtain, the room, the levers, the people in the room, and the air they're breathing.
Yes. But here is the danger with this whole concept.
Okay, what's the danger?
If we just stop right here, it's just a clever intellectual exercise. It's just semantics. You can say, okay, fine, God is the universe, big deal. I'm going to go back to paying my taxes and being stressed out.
Right. Just knowing this intellectually doesn't necessarily make you feel any different when you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic or you're furious at your boss.
Exactly. You need to feel it. And this is where the source brilliantly pivots from the purely intellectual definition to an experiential one.
And to do that, it brings in a quote from Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. Now, Tolle is an absolute master of explaining the felt experience of these concepts. He moves it from the head down into the body.
The quote the text uses, "In the stillness of your presence, you can feel your own formless and timeless reality as the unmanifested life that animates your physical form."
There are a few really heavy concepts packed in there. Unmanifested life, formless reality.
Yeah, let's talk about unmanifested life, because when I look in the mirror every morning, I look pretty manifested. I see a physical face, I see a few new gray hairs.
Sure, but think about the difference between a recently deceased body and a living person. Physically, chemically, the stuff is exactly the same. The atoms are there, the cells are there.
Right, the hardware is all intact.
But in a corpse, something is undeniably gone. That animating energy, that awareness, that spark, is the unmanifested life. It's the electricity running through the lamp.
And Tolle suggests we can actually feel that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I've tried meditation, I've tried finding the stillness people always talk about, and usually I just find my grocery list. Or anxiety about an email I need to send, just noise.
Oh, that is the universal struggle. Everyone goes through that. But the text says you feel it in the stillness. It's not a new thought you add to the pile of anxiety.
So it's not something I have to actively think about.
No, it's what remains when the thoughts finally subside. It's that low background hum of simply being alive. Think about when you just wake up, right before the stress of the day hits, before you even remember your name or your job. There is a split second where you just are.
Oh, I know that feeling. That pure I am
Wow.
feeling.
Exactly, that incredibly basic sensation of sheer existence. The text says that when you contact that, when you touch that electricity inside yourself, you realize something profound.
It says, you can then feel the same life deep within every other human and every other creature.
This is the bridge.
This is how we get from the cold logic of God as a natural phenomenon to something that actually changes how we treat the people around us.
Yes. Tolle calls it looking beyond the veil of form and separation.
The veil of form. I really like that image. It implies that our physical bodies, our differences, how we look, where we live, our politics, our opinions, are essentially just a disguise, a costume.
A costume or like a container.
Hmm.
If you look at a row of different colored lamps, say a red one, a blue one, a green one, they look totally different on the outside. They cast different light. They have different shapes.
Sure.
But if you look at the electricity powering them, it's the exact same current. It's not a similar current. It is literally the same grid. The source is asking us to look at the electricity, not the lampshade.
And the text explicitly names this realization. It says, this is the realization of oneness. This is love.
It completely redefines love, too. And I think this is crucial. In our modern culture, love is usually framed as an emotion like a reaction to something pleasing. I love pizza. I love my wife.
But here, love isn't a reaction to something external.
No. Here, love is the deep recognition of a shared identity. I love you because, at the most fundamental subatomic level, I am you. The separation is the illusion.
So when I hurt someone else, I'm literally hurting the larger body that we both belong to.
Exactly, like a hand stabbing the leg. It's madness.
That brings us perfectly to the synthesis part of the source, where it really calls us to action. It says, being enveloped within the divine, we must dispel the illusion of separateness.
Notice the word must. It's an imperative. It's not just a nice optional idea or a hobby for Sunday mornings. It's a necessity.
Right. Because if we are enveloped within the divine, swimming in it like fish in water, then acting as if we are these separate, isolated islands constantly fighting for survival is actually a form of insanity.
It's completely denying reality.
The text lays out a sort of triad of acceptance to combat this. It says we need to accept oneness with three specific things. First, with each other.
Which naturally follows from that Tolle quote. Seeing the unmanifested life in others, even the ones who deeply annoy you.
Especially them. Second, we must accept oneness with God.
Which follows from the definition of God as the summation of existence. You accept your place in the whole. You stop trying to be the isolated manager of the universe.
And third, accepting oneness with the universe itself.
This creates a completely unified worldview. You aren't fighting the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself.
It really connects the dots between the cold logic of the first half, that God is the summation, and the warm experiential feeling of the second half, that love is oneness.
It does, and I really think you need both. You need the logic to give your skeptical modern brain permission to drop those old supernatural doubts. You need to know that it mathematically makes sense.
But you need the feeling, the stillness, to actually experience the connection.
Right, the intellectual realization that I am part of the summation has to lead to the emotional realization of love, or it's useless.
It's so interesting how this source attacks the problem of doubt. It never once tells you to just have more faith. It tells you to fix your definitions.
That is a brilliant observation. Faith usually implies believing in something despite a total lack of evidence. I can't see it, but I believe it.
But this source argues you have the evidence. You are the evidence. You just need to stop interpreting the evidence as being separate from God.
Yes. God is us because we are.
I'm going to be thinking about that line for a very long time.
It's a complete reversal of the typical religious dynamic. It profoundly empowers the individual. You aren't waiting for a sign from above. Your very existence is the sign.
So let's start bringing this home. We started this deep dive talking about looking up, about that instinct to try and find God in the sky.
And we found that the source encourages us to look in and then look around.
We've moved from the idea of God as a separate supernatural entity which acts like a bearded man on a cloud, to God as a continuity of all consciousness, a natural phenomenon, the summation.
And we learned that the doubt we feel so often just comes from trying to force ourselves to believe in that separate entity. Once we let that go and accept that God is simply all that exists, the conflict dissolves.
You exist, therefore God exists.
Exactly.
And finally, we touched on the practical application. Because this isn't just a theory, it's about stillness. It's about taking the time to feel that unmanifested life that runs through you and realizing that exact same current runs through your neighbor, your dog, and, well, everything.
Dispelling the illusion of separateness. That's the core mandate here.
It sounds so incredibly simple, but it is probably the hardest thing to do in daily life.
Oh, without a doubt.
We love our separateness. We love our little bespoke identities. We love being right and making other people wrong.
We do. Our egos absolutely feed on that separation. But the source suggests that true peace and true love only comes when we peek behind that veil and realize we are literally just fighting ourselves.
So here is where we want to leave you today. We always like to leave you with a final, provocative thought to carry into your week. And it's based on that concept of the summation.
Right. Because if God is truly the summation of all that exists, and we mean all,
then that means the mundane parts of your life are also technically the divine.
right.
Not just the beautiful sunset,
Yeah.
not just your wedding day or the birth of a child. I'm talking about the dirty dishes in the sink, the really difficult, awkward conversation at work, the endless traffic jam on the freeway.
If God is the continuity of all consciousness, then there is absolutely no outside of God. There is no place where the divine ends and regular annoying life begins. It is all one single fabric.
Now, the question is, how would your day change tomorrow if you walked through it truly believing that? If you treated the frustrating moments not as annoying obstacles to your spiritual life, but as an actual part of the divine summation.
Man, it changes everything. It turns the whole world into a temple.
A temple you can never leave because you are the bricks. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
Catch you all on the next one.